initial thoughts.
Was there a scene, I guess, with that because there was a lot in succession there. Was there one in particular that stood out to you more than others?
Or even just general themes or thoughts you had?
Yeah.
So one of the themes that I saw was a lot of them would ask if their partner was okay with the response that they gave, when it's the patient that ultimately gets to decide. It's, you know, it's autonomy at the end of the day. So it just kind of, it's a little silly to ask if someone who doesn't really concern if it's okay.
Very fair point. Why does it matter? Why are we asking these questions in the first place, right? Okay, so maybe we'll go in order. Please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Rehab, how do I say your name?
It's Rahab.
Can you repeat that for me, please?
Rahab.
Rahab.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Thank you, Rahab. Can you please go? Thank you.
I would like to highlight the one with the person that had a doctorate in nursing. There's a value in titles and how you'd like to view yourself. However, there's also an important with accessibility to medical care, and it would confuse some people if they're told it was a doctor instead of a nurse. And some people would only like to express explicit information to either party. But the other parts, it was, oh, sorry, my phone.
No worries.
The others were mainly about titles that expressed marital status, which is more of a preference because that's self-identity rather than educational title or job status.
That makes complete sense. So different times titles might be more important in certain situations, but maybe not as much in other situations. Thank you for that. Cameron?
One that really stood out to me was when one lady was talking to a man and said, "You obviously go by Mr." But that's sort of like what Rahab said. He could have a doctorate, or maybe he doesn't want to go by that at all. Like maybe he just thinks that's too formal or something. So it's just like, I know there's really only one option for males in that case, but still to say, oh, obviously, it just is outright that you're assuming. So it just
That's very true. Even what if he doesn't identify as male or as a man? Or my character, sorry, because I was the one who was playing that role, is just making assumptions without really knowing the case or what is true to that person's identity. Thank you. And Madeline?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Rahab that, like, a lot of times, aside from the instance where it's a nurse with a doctorate in nursing, there's just not a relevance in asking that question. Like, if it's a patient interaction, normally you're just going to go by their first name anyway. So it doesn't make a lot of sense why you'd bring up such a topic that's kind of like hurtful to a lot of the people experiencing it. Like, oh, do I have to go by Mrs.? Do I have to go by Miss? Like, do you have to basically disclose your marital status at that point? And a lot of it wasn't comfortable for no reason, really.
So I guess this kind of poses a question. Should we be asking demographic information to our patients or to people in general? And if so, how should we necessarily be framing that? Does anyone have any thoughts? Do you know what I mean by demographic information, guys? Does anyone not know what I mean by demographic information? Please put up your hand.
I'd take a refresher just, you know,
Okay.
to have it.
So pretty much demographic information is how we can describe other people. So things like gender, race, socioeconomic status are just some, and these can be helpful, especially in research or the medical field, in identifying our patients or our people and what they need. So I'm a researcher, for example. So I use demographic information in order to see whether there's differences, individual differences in participation based on their demographic information. So do you have your hand up? Would you like to?
I wanted to talk about the demographic information a bit. I think it's important to know, like, if the information about the demographics, especially for a doctor, is accessible, it might be important for marginalized communities to understand the demographic they work with, so they don't receive as much as implicit bias. Because I know personally, as a woman of color, I would like to go to doctors who are either people of color or experience that demographic more to limit biases.
I honestly feel the exact same way as a woman of color. Completely, if you don't want to, please do not, but would you mind elaborating a little bit on that and why? It's completely up to you.
Oh, there has been studies, also personal experience, where if it's a doctor that doesn't have much experience, they could dismiss or not take you as seriously due to your baseline characteristics, and that you're not receiving the healthcare you should in that circumstance.
Very true. And we can see it in the literature itself, right? That sometimes based off race or gender or different characteristics, some people aren't getting the same levels of treatment as others. So thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate you sharing your personal experience as well. Thank you so much. Okay, so maybe we can get more into a little bit of an activity. I was hoping that maybe we would be able to redesign a demographics form, or maybe we get rid of it in general, whatever we think. But so I'll share my screen. Sorry, you guys can see all my documents. Okay. This. Okay, so this is just kind of a standard demographics form. Can everyone see? So let's even just use this first page. So we have gender, female, male, other, please specify, and prefer not to say. And this is actually taken from real studies. Do we think this is enough options? Show of hands. If you think this is enough, oh, okay, maybe someone else can monitor this because I'm actually having a really hard time seeing.
No worries,
I'll
Danny,
monitor.
I got it covered.
Okay,
Oh.
thank you. So how many people actually think that this is enough, or that this is enough options for people? No one. Okay, so what else should we be adding? What do you guys think? How can we make this more inclusive?
I think
Oops, sorry. I just saw a hand. My apologies.
Okay, you can
Madeline,
go.
and then we'll come back to Rahab.
Rahab, are you going first, or I didn't actually hear? It kind of
you
got cut
can
off
go.
on my
No
end.
worries.
Okay. I would say like it depends on what you're trying to do. Like for a lot of studies, I know that a lot of the times you don't have a good representation of the trans population. So potentially you could ask, oh, are you trans female, trans male, non-binary? You could ask that, but at the same time that could potentially be invasive. So I guess it would depend on what the form is being used for.
Great point. Okay, so what would we like this form to be used for? Let's make a decision. In what context is this form being used? Someone just shout it out. Could be.
Could it be something like a patient intake?
So let's make it that. This is a patient intake form. What other options, or do we want to add any other options here? Okay, I have another question for you guys. How do you feel about the other option? Do we think that's adequate or to cover multiple groups? Do we like it? Do we want to take it off?
The prefer not to say, or the other?
The other, either way. Well, the prefer not to say usually is good in general, just in case, but
Yeah.
we could take that off too if we wanted. But I was particularly mentioning the other, the please specify.
The other, please specify. It kind of feels like othering to other genders, because it's like you're either in the binary, in the socially accepted gender, or you're other, you're excluded in a sense. I think there should be more options where they can just click, not really click, what's it called?
Tick on them.
Tick non-binary or gender fluid, because non-binary is a wide spectrum and includes a lot of genders. It would be more inclusive overall.
Thank you so much for that contribution. So let's take out other because we don't like it. Do we want to add anything else?
I would personally want to add just a section where you could write down your own pronouns.
Love that. So what we're getting into, do you guys know what quantitative, okay, this is a little too big, but just giving options so people can themselves write what they want to write. Do we need it in this format, or can we say something like, how maybe in a better way of writing, or how do you define your gender or something, or how would you like to be referred to? What is the title you would like? Could we do something like that?
Yeah, I think that if there's a place where we can write the gender, it should be that everyone has to write their gender, not
Mhm.
only some people
Exactly.
have to.
No, and honestly, you guys have actually really enlightened me as a researcher. That's something I haven't thought about putting into my own practices, like an open-ended question where everyone could define their gender. So thank you for enlightening me today. I really, really appreciate that.
And I think, yeah, having that catch-all is a good response to the personal quandary I was having, which was, Rahab, like you, I dislike the other term because it is in and of itself othering.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, how many can we put feasibly and realistically? So I think just having everybody should be able to write their own is a better way of managing that in and of itself. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so Mike, how do I?
What are you looking to do?
Oh, here
Stop
it is.
sharing?
Okay. Oh, okay. There we go. Thank you guys so much for participating in that activity. Maybe we will move on to the next one now.